Hello, my name is Catherine and I'm the Director within the Business of Data team here at Crinium, and it is a pleasure to have you joining us today. Driven by our global connected network, Crinium inspires data and analytics senior leaders to drive efficiency and innovation and follow proven paths to success. The Business of Data show is just one of the formats where we showcase thought-leading insights from senior data analytics executives. In each episode, we'll discuss the latest industry news and research and explore the hottest topics, challenges and opportunities from around the world. On that note, we'd love to hear from you. If you have thoughts, questions or topics that you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please do email them over to bod@criniumgroup.com. Data visualizations have a key role to play in any enterprise data strategy. It's not enough to ensure staff have access to the right data at the right time. That data must also be presented in a way that enables business stakeholders to digest it quickly and draw the right conclusions from it. Historically, data analysts were the ones responsible for creating charts and dashboards to inform business decision making. But as more companies invest in self-service tools to allow staff at all levels to access data-driven insights, it's becoming more important for staff throughout the organization to develop the skills needed to tell compelling stories with data. Our first guest joining me in the studio to discuss how enterprises can get the most out of their data visualization in 2021 is Wendy Zhang, who's the Director of Data Governance and Data Strategy at consumer banking company Sallie Mae. I'm so glad Wendy is able to join us, as she has a wealth of experience both within her current role, but also having worked within brands such as NASA and Wells Fargo. Welcome to the studio, Wendy.
Hi, Catherine. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. So let's dive straight into our first question. I think it would be best if you start out by summarizing the current state of play when it comes to data visualization in an enterprise setting.
Sure, absolutely. So what I've observed, in the current state is that there's a focus on focusing on use case, which is driven by the enterprise business intelligence dashboard reporting, which is a very handy, practical tool that really takes the users above and beyond the traditional visualization tools and provides a lot of capabilities and user-friendly interface. It is tailored to a much broader group. And the other trend that I've noticed is the focus on customization to make sure that companies can tell a unique story about their business or their product. Could be focused on a particular industry and to a company to fit their particular need. And to accommodate that, technology really has evolved to provide that kind of capabilities to allow companies to do that. This will go again above the traditional common options that were offered from the visualization options like before today's time. So those are really the trend that I have seen happening a lot in today's enterprise environment.
Well, thank you for setting the scene there so wonderfully, Wendy. Now, do you think that companies generally have the right staff with the right skills and tools?
I think it's a mix. Obviously, some companies are more advanced in this space compared to others, but I do see that companies in general are very willing to adopt the technology. But I will also say that technology in and of itself is a tool, is an enabler, and is going to require companies to hire the right people with the right skills to be successful. So in that sense, there has been some gap in terms of achieving that goal. And data literacy, which is the ability to create, understand, and communicate data to their end users, is a very essential ability to be able to tie everything together in terms of all the important components, having the right people who understand the data, having the right skills, and also the capability to utilize technology to fulfill that purpose.
Thank you so much. Now, let's take a bit of a view of the journey that's happened here. How have enterprise data visualization's capabilities evolved over the last 10 years? Because it's certainly been a journey. So what's that evolution looked like?
Definitely. So data visualization, it has been around forever, right? But the ability to analyze, process, and visualize a large complex data set is really relatively new. So in the last 10 years, because of technology and thanks, to technology, the really data visualization has been able to reach a much broader user group, be that business users or technologists, and so people who traditionally wouldn't be able to utilize visualization, that's the group that are now really utilizing that to tell a compelling story. And so visualization traditionally has been reserved or only accessible to professions such as statisticians and scientists. But because of technology, one is that it's able to reach a much broader user base, and the other one is really allowing us, providing us the capability to keep up with the big data, to make it more consumable. Just think about the amount of data that we have nowadays compared to 10 years ago. It has grown exponentially. And then the other aspect of technology's role in this is actually it really allowed us to accelerate the analytic process, because it's really essential for us to, one, what we just talked about, be able to consume the amount of data, but also be able to derive insights, and which are very important for the business decision making. So every step along the way, from having the raw data to being able to consume that, and then to have the platform interface to derive relevant and very useful insights that will allow the business decision making. Data visualization has played a very crucial role to enable that, but also speed up the process.
Absolutely, and I think that speeding up of the process is so important now more than ever when we're needing those insights very, very quickly. So, I mean, you mentioned there that there's been an evolution as to who had access to this in the past. You mentioned their data statisticians. Who nowadays, as we're speaking in 2021, who in an enterprise should have these data visualization skills now, in your opinion?
I think visualization is very fundamental to the way we communicate in the business setting, try to communicate and then to send the message over. And the short answer is everybody. Everybody should have some capability to visualize data, and it is really very beneficial. That being said, I also think the actual extent of sophistication in terms of the technical know-how really depends on the business needs. So it is a very creative process, in and of itself. That, but also there should be a balance between form versus function. That we like visualization is really changing the landscape of how we look at data. But at the end of the day, it's a means to an end. Its purpose is to communicate information. So we're not in the business to to sell visualization, unless of course you are a company that does sell visualization. But for the most part, for the majority of businesses, we are using visualization to tell stories, especially our unique story. So there needs to be a balance of people who actually understand the underlying business context of the data. So that's the data literacy that we referred to previously. And I think it's very beneficial to have a few specialized data analysts who have the capability to maintain a check and balance. That one is that it would provide people the capability when they need it, so they have it. But also it will continue to stress on hiring the right people who understand the underlying data in terms of their business context, but while also keeping in mind what the data visualization is set out to do for us.
I think that's really interesting that you pull on that point about hiring the right people. Now, I'm kind of going off on a tangent a little bit here, but I think it's of interest. Do you think currently there is that appetite in academia pushing out graduates who have the right skills for this data visualization, or is it a case that you're really having to then upskill them once they come into the company?
I think that it's definitely a combination. Like I've heard both. Some companies definitely prefer to hire from within. It has its own benefits because obviously your people who are already working inside the business will have more intimate knowledge. But at the same time, there are going to be some shortages internally. So it's like I think it's less about whether you should hire outside or within. It's about whichever approach you're going to take, just to make sure that you have the right balance in terms of, again, form and function, that like you train the people, equip people with the right technology, but also the right business training to make sure that they really have a fundamental understanding of the business. And so that coupled with the technical know-how of using the tools is really where you can get them the optimal results.
Absolutely. I think the key word out of this conversation is going to be balance, I think, and I think that's so interesting to say. So we've talked about the past, we've talked about the journey, and we've spoken about the now. I think it's only right that we, in our last part of our conversation here, Wendy, that we turn our attention to the future. So in your opinion, what's next for enterprise data visualization?
I think obviously it's here to stay. We can never do without it. But I also think we're going to keep asking for more from visualization in terms of the capabilities, the user interface, automation, while also really, trying to keep up with the ever increasing amount of data, in terms of volume and complexities, but also that more and more companies now actually have more and more data and in the different platforms. So visualization is going to be asked for more capability to be able to work with all the different platforms and with ever increasing data volume and complexities. So it's definitely here to stay, and I think we're going to see a more popular view, even more popular, right? It's already very well accepted, well perceived, but it's going to be even more popular in terms of more people who want to utilize that. And I would, I want to quote one of the speakers at the 2018 Moscow Big Data Conference, where the speaker stated that algorithms can predict, humans can imagine, but data visualization inspires imagination best. And there's no future for data without visualization.
That's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. And then the last question I'm going to squeak in here, because I think you touched upon it earlier and I want to draw it back out, which is, do you think with this automation, free data analysts to spend more time telling compelling stories with their data, with this visualization, do you think that's going to enable that data storytelling to happen?
Absolutely. I do agree with that. And I think that's really where the power of visualization is really going to come in, because it's so widely accepted and so easily accessible compared to before, where statisticians and scientists and coders will have to write some complex code to create the visualization graphs. But now it's almost like everybody can do it, putting a little bit of time and research and training, then really a lot more people can do that. This just means that it will allow other people, more people, to think about visualization, think about how they can tell the stories. It can also free people from creating those complex visualizations that we used to do in those ways before, but now actually focused on the function in terms of what kind of story we're going to tell, and just learn and study, build a data literacy, not just internally, but also continue to expand and branch out, really to build a holistic picture, to have a high level understanding, so that the underlying capability of tell stories that's very essential to data visualization. That is one thing, to have the technology to do that, but you have to be able to know how you're going to slice and dice your data, how you're going to visualize it, and what you're trying to achieve, and what kind of stories you're going to tell. And once you do have the capability to create a visualization, which is much easier than before, but also how you're going to interpret the end results, because ultimately a picture can tell 1,000 words, but it's still up to interpretation. Mm-hmm. And you really want to make sure you deliver the right message to the right audience.
Absolutely. Wendy, thank you so much. That was absolutely brilliant, and it's always a pleasure chatting to you.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
I will now be handing over to Craig Stewart to continue this brilliant conversation surrounding data visualization with another brilliant guest. Over to you, Craig.
Thanks, Catherine. Really valuable insights there from Wendy around data visualization at Sallie Mae. Joining me here in Johannesburg to share her wealth of experience in data visualization and her passion for storytelling is Jacqueline Carlitz from Westbank. As a data scientist, Jacqueline develops advanced analytical solutions using machine learning and statistical techniques to extract meaning from and interpret data. Jacqueline, thank you so much for joining me in studio. It's great to have you here. It seems like ages ago that you and Annie ran that data visualization workshop for us in Sunninghill.
Yeah, that was so much fun. I really enjoyed that, but now, we can only, I don't know if you do them online now, conferences, but I miss that.
Yeah, miss that interaction, but that's why it's so good to have you in for this conversation. So first, maybe you could just start off by summarizing the current state of play when it comes to data visualization in enterprise settings.
So I think what stood out during the pandemic for me was the fact that data almost came to the forefront without there being a real focus on it, and data visualization being the way we digested all that information, whether it was to look on a map, see almost the hotspots, and have a sense of relief or panic or supporting somebody else, and data visualization being that powerful tool that took us through all of this. To bring it back to the enterprise setting, I'd like to ask you if you've played Teams Bingo at all.
I haven't played Teams Bingo, but I've had quizzes and various other things through Zoom.
So Teams Bingo, it works almost like Bingo, but instead of numbers, you have like different actions on a Teams call. So if somebody's like talking when on mute, you can cross one off. Or when somebody says, can you see my screen? You can cross another one off. So the two that stand out for me personally is when the call lags or somebody has connectivity issues or somebody puts up a graph that nobody can see. So I think in our current setting, even though a lot of people have the skills and the knowledge that we've built up over time, we almost have to adjust in this new Teams environment, because you can't just put up a BI report like supported by 1 million rows and go and filter different cities. It just doesn't work anymore. So we almost have to unlearn and relearn in this whole new environment.
So that storytelling element when it's not in person must have changed, as you said, quite a lot. It must be quite a challenge. How have you sort of adapted and shifted around that?
So I think because you can't gauge body language anymore and all of that, I think for me it's almost become about engagement, because a lot of people are on their phones or thinking about something else, shopping on Takealot, something. And because everybody's cameras are off, you're missing that engagement element, and I think that's become really important.
And how has data visualization changed over the last 5 to 10 years? Obviously now there's a lot more data. Data analytics is really at the forefront of a lot of what people do within their organizations. How have you seen it sort of evolve over the last 5 to 10 years?
I think data visualization has always been important. Even if you think way back in terms of maps and family trees, we've always looked for ways to summarize information. For me, what stood out over the last 10 years, I think, is the ability to almost be able to digest a lot of information and make that complexity more simple through data visualization. Other things that have stood out, I think, is the fact that we can actually now put motion to that information and show how things shift over time and how it changes, as well as having the ability to interact with our data and look at real-time insights.
So is that where you would say technology has sort of played quite a substantial role in changing how people tell stories that lie within their data?
I think we're able to tell better stories because we are able to work with a lot more data. The more data you have, the richer is the information you can extract out of that. So with richer information, you can tell better stories, I think.
So when we did that workshop, and obviously working with Annie Symington, well, it's very much around storytelling, storyboarding, all those sorts of things. How do you sort of balance the use of technology and amazing real-time maps and charts that flow, et cetera, versus good old-fashioned storyboarding and being sort of, I guess, in a more physical environment with people?
I think it's almost working with business people, because I think the saddest thing for me when in a meeting, a business person or somebody who doesn't necessarily work in the data field saying, I'm not a data expert, but somehow they've like built this great story with, even if it's just Excel. I don't want to generalize, but I almost find that the most beautiful graphs I've seen from data experts, but the most meaningful ones I've seen from business people. And we're almost missing that collaboration. I think business people are great at storyboarding. And often data people are very detail focused and really good with graphs and data, but they get lost in the detail, and we almost need that balance through collaboration.
So it's a good segue into the next question, is who in the organization should have data visualization skills? Should it be the realm of the data science team, or is it something that needs to go across the whole organization?
I think it should go across the whole organization, because I think everybody has seen something or experienced something or has a story to tell. And if you limit that, I think you limit insight and information in your organization. I really think it should be something that everybody should be allowed to use and definitely share. I think that collaboration for me is key to really meaningful stories.
Yeah. I always talk about the co-creation of models and insights. Is that kind of what you're alluding to there? Is if you get your data team in the room, plus let's say, for example, your customer marketing team, is that where you find the best stories and the best insights and people actually buy into those?
Definitely. And almost if you have that siloed approach where the data team goes off and develops something and the business team almost has this vision, you always have to go back to each other, and then it becomes double work, because it's like, no, but that's not really what we wanted, that's not what we meant. And I think even if they've got almost that, they're involved from the beginning, they have that ownership, and both teams, one has ownership in the business side and the other one in the data side. So I think it's really important to have everybody together, definitely.
So this is where we're starting to talk a bit around the convergence of business literacy and data literacy. So obviously the business literacy side is the data science teams, et cetera, understanding what's going on in the business, and then the data literacy happening within the business side. Are you seeing that convergence happening, or is it still very much the data team trying to effectively create literacy around data for the rest of the business?
I think it's still quite siloed. I don't think we are at that space where it crosses over yet, but I do think we will get there, because the best models I've built are the ones I've built in collaboration with the business team.
Yeah. All right. And final question is, where do you see data visualization going next? Now, obviously, storytelling has been part of our history for forever, basically. What are some of the next trends that you see from a data visualization and storytelling point of view? And can automation help that, or is it still not really there yet?
So I've got another question for you.
Okay.
Are you on Instagram?
Yes, I am.
So what do you think makes a successful Instagram profile?
I guess it's having a niche or something that's, I guess, authentic for me.
Okay. So for me, it's engagement. So oftentimes you get an Instagram profile, we've got thousands of followers. I find, as a visualization person, I find Instagram extremely interesting, because you only have pictures to tell a story with.
Yeah.
And for me, it's always interesting to see which posts have the most engagement. And I think we, as almost data people in the enterprise setting, can learn a lot from Instagram, because you have almost less than 5 seconds where you scroll through which are the ones you like and which ones are the one you comment on. And I definitely see us moving towards, more AI type, real-time engagement and interactive visualizations, as well as smart devices with real-time insights. And something I'm really excited about is video infographics. So things moving and almost getting people to engage and not just sitting there, shopping or texting or something, and actually engaging with you to almost put something powerful together. So I'm really excited about the future.
Perfect. Jacqueline, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your passion and your thoughts on data visualization and storytelling. So that's it from South Africa today. Now it's time for me to hand over to Kate Tappan in our Sydney studio. Kate, over to you.
Thanks, Craig. Delighted to be here and to welcome our next guest speaker. Vincent Cox, who is Head of Data Science at Oraton. Vincent is a commercially focused technologist with a passion for all things data. Vincent brings more than a decade of experience across a range of data-driven disciplines, from customer analytics to market research, and more recently as the Head of Data Science for the iconic Australian retail brand Oraton. He has a wealth of diverse experience working across the spectrum, both client-side, agency and consulting for enterprise companies on the ASX 100 and Fortune 500 as the peak government bodies. Some of the organisations Vincent has driven a range of data-driven projects include Qantas, Telstra, Coles Group, Woolworths, VW, Expedia, the Australian Federal Government and New South Wales Government, to name a few. As a thought leader, lecturer and fellow at the Institute of Managers and Leaders Australia, Vincent is sharing, developing and working with industry to embed data into the culture and fabric of organisations. Welcome, Vincent. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today.
Not at all. Vincent, I'd really love to get your thoughts on how do you feel data visualization is being viewed in enterprise settings? Do you think companies generally have the right staff, the right skills and tools to fully utilize it?
Yeah, I think that the question in itself is quite interesting, and you pointed out not just the tools but the staff and the skills. I think a lot of it does come back to, especially with enterprise, you've probably gone through a big transformation, you've put in some nice BI tool in, you've done all that work and pop data comes out. It's like, okay, now what? I feel like there's a big challenge in the kind of enterprise visualization space where the organizations need to adapt to the change and required to interpret that information, but also act on that information as well. The data's coming at a much quicker pace.
Absolutely.
People within the business and organization can ask the questions they need straight away instead of expecting that information to come for them. So then, that kind of relationship with the data changes.
The focus, They are able to access that to some extent themselves. And it's definitely taking away from what the core functionality of the data science team going forward could potentially be. Yeah, so it is an interesting blend of, as you say, the technology. Well, you might have an incredible sports car. If you haven't got your driver's license, it's going nowhere.
Yeah.
So,
but it's with any IT transformation, right? You're putting in the solution. Have you thought about the change management? Have you thought about the training that's going to go with it?
Yep.
And how are you going to upskill and increase that maturity in your organization? The tool's not going to solve all your problems. It's going to get you somewhere there, but you need the rest of it to kind of help enable that.
Absolutely. You have to look at these things holistically.
Yep.
There's no silver bullet, unfortunately.
No,
yeah.
I wish.
But yeah, absolutely. We have to invest in it entirely. How have enterprise data visualization's capability evolved over the past 10 years? And what role has new technology played in sort of driving this evolution, do you think?
Yeah, there's a couple of things happening in business intelligence tools that I think is quite interesting from a kind of visualization perspective. Yeah. I'll kind of rattle on a couple that I find quite interesting. I think open data is great.
Yeah.
COVID's a great example where government organizations, hospitals, everyone's been sharing transport statistics, everything you can think of, and it's just readily available. Not just readily available, it's in a way that you can open up in a BI tool straight away.
Use it. Yeah.
So business can understand, okay, how does that information impact my organization? Other things we've got going on as well is kind of the AI and machine learning embedded into the BI tools. And what I mean by that is a business owner can kind of have the information in front of them and go, I want to forecast on this. It's a kind of one click. I mean, it's nowhere near perfect. It's not like a data scientist, but it's starting to help them at least get to the
steps
base.
In the right direction.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the last one is an even more interesting piece where I think a lot of the BI tools are now shifting towards this whole idea of like embedded BI.
Yes. Yeah.
Where instead of going to your BI tool, that information is now embedded in your application within your business. This is happening more and more. People aren't obviously saying it. It could be, I'm not saying it's in a vending machine, but it's like, all the existing applications that you see could just be a BI tool that's kind of surfacing that information. And I think that's changing the thinking. That's where, how can I put BI into like hardware or, an offline setting? It's not always just has to be internet connected as well, which kind of opens up the use cases a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, lots to think about for sure. Who in an enterprise should have data visualization skills? What are the benefits of having a few highly specialized data analysts versus empowering all staff to create their own data visualizations? And we've alluded to this a little bit.
Look, I know this sounds terrible. I don't want to put myself out of a job, but I feel like everyone should be doing it. A good example of this is, I'm picking on a name here, but with Excel, for instance, as a tool, it's kind of regarded like it's you have to have that skill set, within a business.
Yeah. It's fairly mainstream, you're right.
Correct, but I feel like the whole interpreting data and visualizing and storytelling on that data should become, or is becoming, more mainstream. So then I would argue that shouldn't everyone in an organization have that base level of understanding? Because if you want to bring about that change and enable off that BI tool, like I said at the start, you know, everyone needs to understand how you can work with this information and how to utilize it. They don't need to be able to do everything with it, but they need to be able to understand how it works and the mechanics of it.
And do you see that as them also being able to tell their own story back through what they're
100%.
able to visualize? Yeah.
Because the issue is when you have, let's say, a centralized team, I'm kind of going with your example where you've got some specialists in the organization, they're going to serve the person who's screaming the loudest or potentially has the highest budget, or, you know, I feel like everyone should at least have some level of enablement, so the whole organization can kind of grow as well.
Have you found from your experience that people are quite happy to come along the journey for that, or have you experienced some reluctance?
Yeah, I think with any change in IT, there's always reluctance. The way I solved for it, I mean, this could be different in other people's organizations, is to at least have one person to kind of champion you within each department that you can work with, and you're helping them enable themselves. You know, it doesn't mean, no, I've created extra work for you. It's like, no, I'm actually here to help you make your work easier for you, to get you to the information that you want. But then you create that two-way relationship. It's not always about, you know, here you go, off you go, you know, you're by yourself, but it's about let's work together and solve this problem
Again,
together.
That collaboration.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you for that. I'd like to get your perspective on what's next for enterprise data visualization. Will automation free data analysts up to just spend more time focused on telling compelling stories with data? Do you see that's how it would play out?
Yeah, this is an interesting one.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there's...
So if we give everyone the capability, what happens next?
I think if I look at the people side of things, what I'm seeing is more people that are into the kind of the data science and engineering are trying to become more analysts. They're trying to get in front of the business and be able to explain and do that storytelling part.
Yes.
And then
Bridge
you've
the
got
gap between
correct,
business
and I'm now seeing analysts that have particularly been in the kind of commercial side, starting to learn more the science and the engineering.
Interesting.
So I feel like the BI tool, or the kind of the evolution of visualization and how AI and ML could potentially play into it, is it will just elevate the complexity of the work that's going on. I don't feel like it's going to replace people, but it could replace all the time spent wrangling data, for instance, or, you know, finding problems or helping you forecast for information. It will just make that faster, or simplify that work for the data specialists. Yeah.
What excites you most about data visualization, the storytelling process, and you know, what really captures your imagination?
I think you just said it, storytelling. Yeah. I absolutely love the work of, you know, just to being able to craft that data into a story, and to bring about change in an organization. I did some work not too long ago where one graph I saw pretty much changed my view on how I saw that organization.
Really?
I didn't think it was true. I realized that, you know, there was some misrepresentation going on, and I went about kind of trying to disprove that, and through that process, unlock this whole kind of story for them, and took them on that journey, which was great. So, yeah.
Do you think, in terms of the global pandemic that we've all experienced so far, do you think it's brought data more to the public conscience? Like, do you think it's more in the forefront than it's ever been for most people?
Yeah, but I don't know if that's a good thing. I know if you take the pandemic example with the vaccines, like everyone believes they're a vaccine specialist or has a medical degree.
Okay.
You know, we've got cases where they're saying, 2 or 3 people, suddenly something might have gone wrong with the vaccine.
Yeah.
If you ask anyone who works in data and statistics, will tell you that's statistically insignificant and you shouldn't worry about it. But the general public, where they can't understand or interpret this information, are starting to freak out. So it goes back to, it's not about the availability of the information, it's having the skills to interpret that information.
So that has to be very carefully managed to some extent.
Correct.
So you're saying you have everyone have the access, the capabilities to do it, but it is absolutely key, that second part. You can't just give access. It can't be unregulated. You have to ensure that they really do have the skill set to interpret.
Which goes back to collaboration at my start, like making that two-way thing to make sure that you've enabled the people in the right way to use that information.
So we've got lots of pieces.
Correct.
We need to work together to put it all in one picture.
Yes.
Yeah, to drive that forward. Vincent, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you.
Well, I'll hand back to you, Catherine, in our UK studio to wrap this episode. Back to you now, Catherine.
Thank you, Craig and Kate. There we go. What an excellent episode. Thank you again to our thought leaders for their wonderful contributions. Next time, we'll be talking all about data and analytics, talent and community. Just as we've done this time, we'll be joined by expert thought leaders to help deep dive into the challenges and opportunities. Be sure to subscribe to the Business of Data YouTube channel, follow our page on LinkedIn and visit our content platform for more content, insights and connections. Stay safe, stay well, and we'll see you next time.